Okay, thrill seekers, welcome to the 2024 energy forecast with me, Anthony O'Flynn. I'm coming to you from the Sunshine Coast here in Australia, and I will be giving you a comprehensive forecast on what to expect in the year 2024. Many people today have woken up with a massive hangover in their first act of self-sabotage for the year, and are celebrating the accuracy of the Gregorian calendar, and a big shout going out to the Catholic Church for that one. And welcome to 2024. So basically I'm going to be giving an overview of what to expect, many different aspects of what we're seeing with this transition into the new paradigm as the old paradigm fails. And this is going to be in parts. So this is obviously part one, and I'll be going into the different aspects in the different parts of this video. So the way I compile these energy forecasts is a combination of rational, coherent, logical, critical analysis with critical thinking combined with intuition. So it's both the left and the right brain. Some things are fairly logical with a focus on geopolitics, on domestic politics here in Australia, and also going into the spiritual dimension of the global shift in consciousness, which, as I've previously stated, I feel this will be the last part of the awakening, will be the spiritual part for the collective, not for perhaps many people watching this video, but to get this the collective shifting into this doing more inner work, more spiritual work, more having a focus on the awakening and the purification of the soul, and also on experiencing genuine transformation and really integrating this soul power, which is perhaps the single most defining quality that we need in this shift of consciousness, is precisely that soul power. I've explained that in different videos, and basically if you are not welcoming the truth into your life, you prefer to live in an illusion or a delusion, then simply switch off. This video is not for you. If you're a soy boy and you find that someone is warning you that a train is about to run you over and you don't like the truth, then again, switch off now. This video is not for you, and I have no desire at this point of the game in really trying to convert people who are deeply committed to living a lie and deeply committed to believing the propaganda that they see in the media. At this stage of the game, there's only going to be a relatively small percentage of these people who are going to truly spiritually awaken. And I'm talking moving beyond the idea of understanding that the media has been lying to us, that the government's lies to us, and all these sorts of things. This is par for the course for 90% of people, 80 to 90% of people on this planet in the Great Awakening, at least in the more developed nations. Some of the other countries in the world have a different integration into this, but I'm sure that they'll find their own way at the same time. This is not some sort of first world entitlement program. This is a global awakening, and as I said previously, I do think that there will be people in each country and every country on this planet that go through the full spectrum of awakening, and there will be groups of light shining in every nation. It's just that the path there will look a little different depending on the religion, depending on the cultural factors, cultural settings, and all these sorts of things. But definitely your rite of passage in this process is not defined by living in a first world country, having a mobile phone, having access to the internet, any of those things. This is the quality of the soul, ultimately, that every soul will be weighed, will be tested, will be measured in the fullness of this this rite of passage that we're all going through. So basically, I'll be discussing the themes in 2024. Oh, I should mention, if you see I've got a blue ear, I'm doing some treatment for an issue I've got with my skin. So that's what that is. Just get that out of the way up front. So basically, I referred to as 2023 as a year of the counter move. I'll explain why, and I'll give a brief review of why I termed 2023 the year of the counter move. In my view, as I'll explain, this was highly accurate. Although this counter move of humanity is not over yet, it's really only just beginning, but we can see that this process has well and truly begun. In fact, I'll go through that firstly now while we've raised this topic. So when I hear the counter move, it's basically a term I've given to the awakening of humanity for 2023, not 2024, as far as the effects at a causal level from the pandemic and from the various forms of tyranny that unfolded during those years 2020, 21, 22, and also leading up to that, of course, as well. I mean, really, there's been a section or a sole group of the global population that have been aware of these issues for some people well over 20 years. So this is nothing new. What came from the events of 2020 and beyond, more the response from humanity was perhaps the only thing that was uncertain in some ways. But really, let's just go through a few of these points. And these are the effects of this. I'm measuring this in terms of effects, and they are not subjective, they are objective. Pfizer stock in a 1 year chart, year on year, is down 43%. I also said that in the June energy update that Australia had reached peak wokeness, that even though that there would still be a push by the globalists and all these people who are supporting unconsciously often this agenda, whether it's bureaucrats or whoever, people in corporations, that this had peaked. Just recently, a South Australian council has abolished the welcome to country. People have had enough of being welcomed to their own country, and many people claim that it is disingenuous and patronising a lot of the time to be welcomed to their own country. There's been a backlash against the woke gender in terms of the revenue of Disney Plus, who have lost millions and millions of subscribers, and they're now merging with Hulu. So much of the social engineering and the pushing of the woke values through Disney has backfired on this company at a financial level in a huge way, like colossal way actually. And we're seeing that as being a counter move, that people are simply unsubscribing, not spending their money, not voting with their dollars. So other things include the cancellation of The Drum on the ABC, which I actually happened to watch some of that program on the weekend of the referendum. I was in Brisbane for work, and I actually watched this, which I wouldn't normally watch free-to-air TV that often at all, but I was absolutely appalled at what passes for so-called journalism on that channel. I mean, it is just pure left-wing socialist propaganda that is so imbalanced and is so biased. I was actually quite shocked, and I was talking to people about it days after even, that's what passes for journalism on the ABC. That show's been cancelled. The project has been cancelled in New Zealand. We've had the resignation of Daniel Andrews and Anastasia Palaszczuk, some of the main players in the pandemic, and I'm not naive enough, as many people watching this, to think that this is not going to be a continuation of the agenda moving forward, but it does show that there was political pressure there coming from within the parties, and also that they had played their role doing what they had been instructed to do. And instructed is clearly the word that needs to be used, because these people are not making these decisions on their own volition. They are ultimately puppets. And there's been a number of other key players also that have resigned throughout 2023. But we are seeing some sort of backlash. There's also the beginning of class actions in regard to the magic potion. There's the whole backlash against the magic potion and the ineffectiveness of this medication and so on. And this again is part of the counter move. So we also see at the end of the year that there will be a release of Epstein documents. I was just watching a video from the court case from 2019 in regard to the evidence that was released in the actual court case. Many of those people or those lists that you've seen on social media are actually in the court documents. This isn't some kind of conspiracy theory. I've just shared a video with a list of that on my Twitter account under my name, Anthony O'Flynn. You can check that out for yourself. It is pretty shocking, the names you'll see on that list, who it is, their profile, the industries they're in. Many of these people have definitely been confirmed on the flight logs. They have been to Epstein Island, that is without question. I don't think that there'll be anything further coming from this release of the Epstein documents in terms of major trials or convictions or something like this. I think this will not occur. This is a little bit of a bridge too far at this point of the global shift. So also we're seeing the migration as being a huge issue, and people are now really realizing that the migration rate cannot continue simply because of the housing crisis here in Australia. There's a lot of pressure on the Labor government at federal level and also state levels. I think that Albanese is cooked already. He will not be re-elected in the next election by the time this comes around. The cost of living crisis, which is another kind of Orwellian term for government borrowing, money printing with no accountability, spending other people's money, and also creating a regressive tax on the working class through the creation of inflation, will be such huge issues in this country that by the time we get to the next federal election, that Albanese really will look like the complete clown of a Prime Minister that he truly is. And he's just again been recently criticised for submitting his favourite songs to the Triple J Top 100. Meanwhile, there's people living in tents all over cities, living in their cars, working numerous jobs and struggling to pay the rent. And at the same time, we've got a net migration in the last 12 months here in Australia of 518,000. This is unsustainable, and we as a nation need to really start to look after our own first. There's a lot of issues about that will be debated now openly about what is the numbers for sustainable migration. The Australian people are moving into a more mature attitude to discuss this without the fear of being labelled a racist or something like this, and to care for the community that's here already and have a sustainable population growth. As the problems that we're seeing everywhere reflecting in the pressure on roads, on schools, on hospitals, on all kinds of infrastructure, and particularly on the housing situation as well. I read somewhere that at the current rate of migration, we need to double the number of dwellings that are being built at the moment in a year, which of course isn't going to happen. And on top of that, you're seeing this other intensification of the building crisis because of the number of builders that are going into liquidation, that are going bankrupt, that are folding for various reasons, but particularly because they've misquoted the cost of jobs and basically are building houses breaking even or even losing money, and all the other reasons as well. The shoddy construction that we're seeing, particularly in places like Sydney with the high rises. It's all basically coming to the theme of 2024 as a year of convergence. But just to round off that point about 2023 as the year of The counter move, obviously the biggest one was The Voice. I mean, it was a disaster. It cost hundreds of millions of dollars. In my view, it has done an irrefutable and irreversible damage to the political capital of Albanese and to the fortunes of the Labor Party going into the next election cycle. And also, again, as a reflection of this cost of living crisis, the inflation, which again is another problem the government have created, and a complete lack of solutions, a complete lack of even any action around this, any debate, any conversation, any rhetoric even from Albanese, who just seems to be flying around the world, going to various meetings and so on. And it's an overall overarching trend which we'll see continue and particularly intensify in 2024, which is the failure of government. That government as an organisation, as an institution, as even some kind of social modality has failed the people of Australia, and it's much worse in many other countries around the world, and a lot of this failure is by design. So many of these topics, of course, people are very much aware of, but 60% of the Australian public voting against The Voice showed that people in Australia don't want race enshrined in the Constitution, don't want division in the Constitution, don't want a divided society, that we want to stay united, and that there are also far more pressing issues that should be given resources to, rather than simply trying to alter the Constitution itself, which again, many people saw through the smokescreen that it was really a Trojan horse to transnational interference, international interference in Australian property rights, and many of the other things that were very nefarious in this document, which was highly ambiguous by design and was rejected by the people. Meanwhile, literally less than a week after the referendum failed, Jacinta Price actually made a motion in the Senate, in the Australian Federal Senate, to ask the government to set up a royal commission on child abuse in the Indigenous culture, which there was so much rhetoric that was going to wanting to do more for the Aboriginal people, wanting to help the Aboriginal people more, which all Australians agree on. But yet, when it comes to actually taking any action, any meaningful action, particularly around something that's so horrific as child abuse, the Labor senators and the Greens voted against it. And this was a motion to actually take some action to try to end this despicable practice and to investigate it and try to take some real action to help the Aboriginal people all over Australia in regard to this, particularly obviously the children. And yet it was rejected by the politicians pushing this left-wing woke socialist agenda at the same time, which was highly revealing as to the true intentions of these so-called elected politicians and servants, public servants. Absolutely disgraceful. And not only that, is that it actually hardly had any media coverage at all, that this motion was even raised by Jacinta Price. So that's also very meaningful as well, that it wasn't considered that newsworthy and it was voted down. So in the next video, I'll pick this up, and I'll be, as I've just mentioned, I'll be looking at 2024 as a year of convergence. I'll explain why with these events coming together. I'll be discussing the end of the USA empire more broadly, the end of the Anglo-American empire, I wouldn't say hyperinflation of the US dollar. We're not at hyperinflation yet, but the dramatic decline of purchasing power of the US dollar, the rise of the BRICS, and ultimately the demise of the petrodollar. 2024 in my view is finally the year of precious metals. This is not financial advice. I'm not offering anyone financial advice under any context. I'm just saying this as an observer. I'll be going into this. The end of the woke agenda. The woke agenda has run its course, particularly things like this transgender athletes competing and so on, and many of these other completely inverted agenda that's being put forward. People are rejecting this more and more en masse. I'll be talking about the splitting of the timelines, what that means for the decline or demise of relationships, friendships, intimate relationships, family relationships that you will simply, if you're on this path of awakening, notice that people start to drop out of your life for various reasons. It's not so relevant what the cause is. I'm more focusing on the effect. Globalists are losing the propaganda war. Absolutely, regardless of the censorship, the complete social engineering due to the networks, the shadow banning, the limits of reach, all this kind of thing. They're still losing the propaganda war. There's been a lot of talk, obviously, ongoing about the toxic masculine and this toxic masculine culture. I'm just really speaking here in Australia, and I'll be talking about the trend that actually began even before last year, and I forgot to mention it in my videos, is the rise of the revealing of the toxic feminine, which is highly triggering for a lot of people, and the effect of the creation of what can be loosely termed the manosphere, and the rise of masculinity, actually, with some of the self-awareness around the feminization of men, and these sorts of issues. We'll just leave that there for this explanation, but that's one of the other themes. I'll be looking at the cyber attack and even some of the statements coming out from the WEF. Will there be a civil war in the USA? A black swan event in 2024? Cost of living crisis in Australia? The fiat currency Ponzi scam? The magic potion being exposed? The realization that relying on government organizations and institutions is going to be potentially for some people more and more problematic, in the sense that people on the Gold Coast, for example, with these recent storms and so on, they haven't had power for some of them 5, 6, going on 7 days now. That's what I'm hearing anecdotally, and how to prepare for in terms of becoming more self-sufficient. Also, the rise of the Christ consciousness, what that actually means, and also the spiritual dimension, and that the new currency is actually consciousness. I'll also be detailing the astrological configurations and transits, at least for the beginning of 2024, what to expect. There's some huge ones, so I'll pick this up in the next video. Finally, to conclude, which is quite a profound one, which will need some explanation. The collective here in Australia have collectively chosen the path of humility as a soul lesson en masse. And you may actually say, how can that possibly be? Well, it's really revealed in the statement that pride comes before the fall. This middle class pretentiousness, snobbishness, this debt-based consumerism, this keeping up the Joneses mentality in Australia, this entitlement is coming to a radical end in this country. And I mean radical. It's going to happen extremely fast. And at the core of this actual lesson will be humility, because it's a quality completely lacking in this egregore, in this soul collective here in Australia. And as I said, pride comes before the fall, and we are in for quite a roller coaster in 2024 here in Australia. I'll pick this up in the next video. Thanks for watching. And if you don't watch this next one, have a great 2024. We actually have the first ever Navigating the Shift retreat in the Gold Coast in May. I'll put a link in for the video. And it's all-inclusive retreat. We'll be looking in how to really come to terms with what's occurring here. It is way ahead of the curve. It's the forefront, this retreat, in terms of esoteric information, practical information, techniques and so on, and how to generate this soul power for the awakening and moving forward through this ongoing paradigm shift. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for part 2. We live in epic times.